I never thought that passing around hors d'oeuvre at my own son's business dinner would end with my dignity served up for laughs. But that's exactly what happened. "The help eats in the kitchen," Danielle said, loud enough for the whole Reynolds board to hear. The shrimp tray trembled in my hands, not because it was heavy, but because I wasn't prepared for the shame that flooded me. Danielle's eyes scanned me up and down like I was a stranger. She smirked. My son Aaron sat beside her, silent, staring into his wine glass like he hadn't just watched his wife gut his mother with a single sentence. No one said a word. Phones were out. I saw 3 different ones angled subtly, catching the moment, catching me, in an apron, serving food, mouth slightly open like a fool. Danielle didn't miss a beat. She laughed, then leaned into her whispering circle of board wives, her champagne glass high and glittering. She didn't know I'd brought the catering tonight because Kendra's assistant got sick last minute. I was just helping, wearing the apron, not wearing the title. But Danielle saw a moment to humiliate me, and she took it like it was her birthright. I smiled, though my teeth ached from clenching. "Cancel the $30 million contract," I said as I took out my phone. Danielle's laughter faltered. My son Aaron went still. I pressed send, and then I walked out. Outside, under the flickering gas lamp on West Jones Street, the air was thick with magnolia and October heat. I leaned against the stone pillar, hands still sticky from the shrimp tray, heart beating so hard I felt it in my ears. My phone buzzed. Kendra, the caterer. "Ms. Margot, you okay?" she'd texted. I wasn't, but I would be, because something inside me had just snapped. Not broken, snapped clean, like a dead branch separating from the tree. I had co-signed their mortgage. I had paid for their down payment. I had taken their children to piano lessons and baked birthday cakes and handed over hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. And this is what I got in return? The help eats in the kitchen. Fine, they wanted to treat me like staff? They were about to find out what happened when the real owner of the table, the contracts, the trust, the money, decided she didn't want to be part of the party anymore. They had no idea who I used to be, but they were about to find out who I still am. I stood under that gas lamp for exactly 4 minutes before I opened my phone again and called a car. The boardroom laughter still echoed in my ears. Not hers, mine. Danielle's laugh, rich and polished, designed to sound expensive. She knew what she was doing. She always did. That's the part that stung the most. This wasn't a slip of the tongue or a wine-fueled faux pas. She had planned it. Picked the moment when the Reynolds executive board would be watching. When I had no backup, no title, no place to fight back without looking emotional. Inside, she was already erasing me from their lives. I saw it in my periphery before I walked out. The family photo from Hilton Head, gone from the mantle. My face, cropped out and replaced with a beach quote plaque. God, I sat on the cold stone wall as my phone showed, "Marcus is 2 minutes away." When the black sedan pulled up, I was expecting a stranger. Instead, I heard a quiet voice say, "Ms. Margot?" It was Marcus Williams, my old student, sophomore year chemistry, 2004. "Didn't think you'd remember me," he said, grinning as he opened the door. I stared at him like a lifeline. "Your volcano science fair project ruined my carport. How could I forget?" He laughed, big and warm, and for the first time in hours, I remembered I wasn't small. I had mattered. Still did. Somewhere. We drove in silence for a while, through the cobblestone streets of downtown Savannah, my apron still folded in my lap like a relic from a former life. My phone buzzed again. 3 notifications. Danielle had already posted a photo. The dining room table, all smiles, hashtagged, #family first, #blessed. I clicked out of it before the bile rose too high. I looked at my camera roll instead. Scrolling back, July. Grandkids on the beach. Me cooking in the kitchen. One shot of me and Aaron from before Danielle dyed his hair and cut his ties to everything soft. Back then, he still looked like my boy. My chest ached. I hadn't lost a seat at that table tonight. I'd just realized it had never really been mine. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. That part of me had already died. Sometime between diaper changes and wire transfers. Tonight wasn't grief. It was clarity. As Marcus pulled up in front of my home, he hesitated. "You want me to wait, Ms. Margot?" I shook my head. "I'm done waiting," I said. Inside, I took off the apron, hung it up neatly. Then I sat down, pulled up a blank document on my laptop, and wrote the words, Joel Rice, Elder Legal Group, urgent. Because tomorrow, I'd be done surviving. I was ready to fight. 3 weeks earlier, my life had a rhythm, simple, small, and mine. Tuesdays were for volunteering at the downtown library. I'd shelve books, dust off forgotten titles, chat with retirees looking for cookbooks or old mysteries. Thursdays, I met Dolores, Jean, and Cora for brunch at Bird's Biscuit House. 4 widows, too loud, too opinionated, always laughing at something that hurt too much to name. Sundays, I tended my roses at Forsyth Park, walking the curved path past tourists and joggers and young couples who didn't know what they'd lose yet. I liked my days. They were soft. Danielle didn't. She called them aimless. Said things like, "We just worry about how you're spending your time, Margot." Like joy was a symptom. Like aging peacefully was a disease that needed managing. She started with the grandkids. Little changes at first. Sleepovers rescheduled. Dinners pushed back. Weekends too busy. Suddenly my calendar was full of crossed-out plans and one-sided apologies. It was always phrased kindly, and Erin echoed her words without making eye contact. I told myself they were busy. But busy people don't unfollow your social media and block your number during school hours. Busy people don't miss birthdays. Busy people don't take everything and still act like they're the ones being burdened. Inside my home, off Habersham Street, yellow door with the chipped paint, I still kept every photo. My fridge was a timeline of art projects and crooked smiles. On my bookshelf were birthday cards folded neatly in a keepsake box, everyone signed in Danielle's bubbly handwriting. "Thanks for everything, Margot. Love you. Love you." I stared at that phrase more than once that week, wondering how many times someone could lie through a pen before the ink turned to poison. My money came steady. $4, $200 a month from Social Security, another $3, $800 from a school administrator pension. I earned over 33 years of keeping underfunded schools from falling apart. I didn't need handouts. I never asked for them. But I gave. I always gave. When Erin and Danielle were tight on cash, I stepped in. Quietly. Without pride. That's what family did. Or so I believed. Now it was clear. I had been the bridge. And once Danielle had the house, the grandkids, and Erin's attention, she burned the bridge and blamed me for standing in the smoke. Wednesday afternoon, Pastor Ray from St. Luke's stopped by like he always did. He handed me a small container of banana pudding and said, "Just checking in, Ms. Margot. You've been on my heart." I nodded, unable to speak, because in the silence, I realized something. This wasn't a sudden betrayal. It was a long, slow erasure. And I'd been complicit. But not anymore. I still remember the day I signed the papers like it was yesterday. June 14th, 2022. Bank South, Bull Street branch. The air inside was thick with air conditioning and nervous energy. Danielle wore a white pantsuit, pearls so tight around her neck it looked like she couldn't swallow. But she smiled like the queen of Chatham County. Erin didn't say much. Just kept tapping his pen on the desk. Nervous habit from when he was a boy. He used to do that before every spelling bee. "Mama," he said that morning, "it's not a big deal. We just need someone on paper, someone the bank trusts." It was supposed to be a character reference. That's what they said. "It'll help us qualify for the Reynolds Executive Relocation Loan," Danielle added, all honey and dimples. "You know how these banks are with young families? Everything's harder unless you've got equity history. I had good credit. Always had. Never missed a payment in my life. So I co-signed. And I wired them $70,000 from my savings the following Monday. Down payment. Closing costs. Danielle called it our legacy investment. She said it like we were partners. Back then, I believed her. Carla Tran, the loan officer, looked up at me right after we signed. "You sure you want your name on this, Ms. Reynolds?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "She's very decisive." I laughed. That's one word for it. Carla didn't smile back. Looking at it now, I realized Carla saw what I didn't. Danielle was building a life where I was only useful in the foundation, never welcome in the home. Aaron hugged me outside the bank, hard and quick, like a kid late for something. "You're helping us build a future, Mama," he said. I thought I was. I really did. That house, the one on West Jones with the ironwork balcony and the second staircase Danielle insisted on, it was the house I never had. And in some small, foolish corner of my heart, I thought I was buying a place in their lives. Turns out, I was just buying my own exile and paying in full. Inside my home office now, that wire transfer still lives in my email. Subject line, transfer confirmation, $70,000-M Reynolds to A Reynolds. Every time I open it, I feel a little older, a little stupider. But I don't delete it, because when the reckoning comes, and it will, that email will be part of my return. Not for revenge, for truth. Would you like me to continue with Part 5, Ledger of Care? You said, plus Old Woman Narrator 23.08 said, repeat button Part 5, Ledger of Care recap. I co-signed their mortgage and gave them $70,000, believing I was helping build our family's future. But I was just underwriting my own erasure. Word count, 498. I sat down at my desk the next morning and opened a spreadsheet. Not because I needed the money back, but because I needed to see the truth in black and white. Years of giving, years of small favors that became a lifestyle, a pattern. And the pattern looked like this. $11,000. 2 years of free childcare while Danielle found her footing after maternity leave. $38,000. Balance of their SUV loan paid off after Danielle cried about missing Tyler's school drop-offs. $4,600. Groceries when they said things were tight but still flew to Vail. $2,100. Catering for the dinner where I was called the help. $78,800. Home projects they couldn't qualify for alone. Appliances, porch renovation, solar panels. 19 dinners. 5 holidays hosted. 3 years of birthday parties paid for and planned by me. I added it all up. $134,500. That's how much I'd given them over 5 years. And what had I received in return? A fake thank you card. 1 oversized wine bottle with my name spelled wrong. No mention in the company charter. No voice in family decisions. No seat at the table. Just silence. Just erasure. I texted Glenna Marsh, my old friend from the district finance office, and asked if she had time to help me organize some receipts. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. "Margot," she said, skipping right past hello. "Who's screwing you over?" I laughed, but it came out tight. "Not sure yet. Might be a group project." We spent 4 hours on Zoom that day. Glenna didn't ask too many questions. Just helped me build folders. Venmo screenshots, scan checks, emails from Danielle thanking me for things she later claimed never happened. It was quiet work. The kind you do when someone you love has been robbed, and you can't return what was stolen, but you can at least record it. At the end of it, Glenna said something I'll never forget. "This isn't about money, Margot. It's about rewriting the ledger. They've been subtracting you from their lives for years. This puts you back in the equation." That night, I sat in my sunroom and stared at the paper trail I'd built, one receipt at a time. This wasn't just evidence. It was my history, my motherhood, my marriage, my place in the family. And now, for the first time in a long time, I was reclaiming it. Not with tears or pleading, but with proof. I closed my laptop. The next move wouldn't be emotional. It would be legal. The first real warning didn't come in the form of an insult. It came in a casual shrug. July 2nd, I was sitting on the back porch trimming my hydrangeas when Danielle called. "Hey, quick thing," she said, voice breezy. We're gonna have to reschedule that notary meeting for the will update. Something came up. I paused. She kept going. No rush, though. You're healthy enough. Healthy enough. It echoed, like she'd already calculated what not healthy enough might look like and decided the paperwork could wait until then. I stared at the shears in my hand, something cold sinking into my chest. The meeting had been my idea, just a simple update to reflect the loan, the house, the business interests I'd helped them get off the ground. Joel Rice, my attorney, had drafted everything. All I needed was Danielle and Aaron's signatures. It was supposed to happen that afternoon. Now she was pushing it back with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand, like I was the one being unreasonable for wanting a little legal clarity after fronting 70 grand. I'll have Aaron call you to find another time, she added. He never did. 2 weeks passed. I brought it up again at dinner. Salmon I'd baked for the 5 of us. Danielle poured herself wine before answering. I just think we should hold off on anything permanent until after the next fiscal review. Things are shifting with the trust. We don't want to overcomplicate. Overcomplicate. That's how she described a document that would protect me from being written out of the very empire I helped build. I didn't push. Not yet. But later that night I texted Joel. Can we move forward without their signatures? He responded in less than a minute. Not if it concerns their portion, but we can file to protect your contributions. Come in Monday. I stared out the kitchen window as Danielle's laughter floated up from the fire pit. She was showing Aaron something on her phone, a listing in Charleston, I think. Something about future investment property. That's when I knew. She had no intention of ever signing that document, because she didn't plan on sharing. She planned on replacing. Not just me, but the whole story of how they got here. Make herself the architect. Scrub me out of the foundation. But I was done being silent. The woman who'd once helped Danielle pick out her wedding dress was gone. The woman sitting here now was done asking, done trusting, and very nearly done waiting. September 10th. Midtown. I walked into Aaron's office with a small peach cobbler in my hands, still warm, wrapped in foil, and left with something colder than betrayal. I left with the truth. Aaron looked surprised to see me. Not unhappy, just startled, like I didn't belong anymore in the world he'd built. I was just about to head to a meeting, he said, eyes darting to the wall clock. This'll only take a minute, I smiled, placing the cobbler on the edge of his desk. I reached into my purse and pulled out the manila folder. Inside were copies of the business formation documents I had helped him draft 3 years ago, when the Reynolds firm was still a hope and a borrowed office space. I flipped to the trust agreement. These say I'm listed as a 15% co-owner in the trust through my initial capital investment. Aaron shifted uncomfortably. About that, he turned to his laptop, clicked through folders. We restructured some things last quarter. Danielle thought, the board thought, it made sense to simplify the document trail. I waited. I didn't blink. What do you mean, simplify? He cleared his throat. Your name was never officially listed in the new LLC. Technically, you know how lawyers are, messy with transitions? I stared at him. A man I carried through scarlet fever at 6 years old. A man whose tuition I paid in full. A man I spoon-fed soup after his wisdom teeth surgery because Danielle couldn't handle blood. Now that same man was telling me I was no longer part of the company I helped build because his wife thought it made sense. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just nodded. Could I get a copy of the new structure? He hesitated, then clicked through more folders. Beth's been running admin. She can email it. Beth. Paralegal. Friend of mine. Trusted. Great, I said. I'll reach out to her. He didn't walk me out. Just sat back in his chair, pretending to work, pretending this wasn't happening. As I left, I passed the glass conference room. Danielle inside, smiling big for a group of junior execs. She didn't even glance up. But Beth emailed me the docs that night. Articles of Incorporation. Amended July 15th, 2025. No mention of me. Not in the trust. Not in the minutes. Not in the ownership breakdown. I'd been erased. Officially. I forwarded the file to Joel. Subject line, confirm fraud potential. 5 minutes later, he replied, yes, we move now. I closed the laptop and whispered to the empty room, where it is. September 28th, I drove out to Tybee Island, just like I'd done every fall for the past 7 years. That condo, soft seafoam walls, second-story balcony, the little hummingbird plaque by the door, had been my escape since Aaron was in college. After Frank died, I'd split the deed with Aaron, 51% in my name. Danielle called it a, quote, family beach property. I called it peace. Until that morning. I pulled up to the gatehouse, smiling at Ralph, the weekday security guard, who always greeted me with a half-eaten pack of almonds in one hand and crossword in the other. Mornin', Ms. Reynolds, he said, then hesitated, squinting at his clipboard. Hang on a sec. He flipped a few pages, then frowned. I don't see you on the access list. I blinked. That can't be right. He turned the clipboard toward me. Only Aaron and Danielle Reynolds listed under authorized owners and guests. You sure it wasn't a paperwork mix-up? No, I was sure it wasn't. This wasn't a mistake. This was another subtraction. Another deliberate, quiet, surgical removal. My voice was steady, but I felt the heat rise in my neck. The deed says otherwise. Ralph raised his hands. Look, I'm just following what I've got here. You want to call the HOA office? I'll do better than that, I said. Can I get a printout of that list? He hesitated. Not really supposed to. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me. Something in my face must have changed, because he stood, walked to the office printer, and handed me the paper without another word. It was all there in black and white. The new list, dated September 22nd. 2 names. Mine, gone. I thanked him, turned around, and sat in my car until my hand stopped shaking. Danielle's voice played in my mind. We figured you weren't traveling much anymore. Of course. She was counting on that. Counting on me to stay quiet. Stay home. Stay erased. I pulled up the deed file on my phone, the original PDF from 2018. Margot Evelyn Reynolds, 51% ownership, still valid, still binding. I sent both documents, the deed and the HOA list, to Joel with the subject line, unauthorized access removal. Time to light the match. His reply came fast. Understood. Fraud plus breach of property rights. Let's push. I drove back over the bridge as the tide rolled in. Let them think they'd locked me out. Let them think the gate would hold. Because they didn't know. I still held the keys, and I was done knocking. September 30th, late afternoon, Aaron's driveway. I didn't plan to confront him. Not really. I'd just dropped off a book for Tyler, his favorite, one I'd kept from when Aaron was little. Blueberries for Sal. Still had the chewed spine from teething. I knocked, but no one answered. As I turned to leave, Aaron pulled up. Alone. He stepped out, phone to his ear, then paused when he saw me. His eyes flashed something. Guilt? Annoyance? It faded before I could be sure. Mom, what are you doing here? I was just dropping off a book for Tyler, I said. Is now a bad time? He rubbed the back of his neck. Danielle took the kids to her sister's. Of course she had. I hesitated, then said it straight. Why did you take my name off the condo access? Aaron sighed. It was a clerical thing, okay? Danielle thought you weren't using it anymore. That's not her decision to make. He looked away. We just didn't think it mattered. You didn't think I'd notice, I corrected. A long silence hung between us. Finally, he said, Mom, I'm asking you. Please stop making this harder than it needs to be. Harder? My lip curled, but I didn't raise my voice. Harder for who, Aaron? You? Because I'm not disappearing quietly? He closed his eyes like I was exhausting him. Like I was being unreasonable for expecting basic dignity. You don't understand the pressure we're under, he said. The business, the family. I'm trying to keep it all together. By cutting me out of it? I'm trying to keep peace, he muttered. I stared at him. My son. The man I raised. now a mouthpiece for his wife's ambition, speaking in half-truths and practiced excuses. I opened my phone and held up the group text he'd removed me from. Family dinner, Sunday 7:30 p.m. No invite. No mention. My name erased. You call this peace? He didn't answer. I gave you everything, I said quietly. I protected you from your father's cruelty. I helped you build this life, and you let her reduce me to background noise. He looked pained, but he didn't deny it. Danielle opened the front door just then, holding a tray of wine glasses. She froze when she saw me. Didn't know we were expecting company, she said flatly. Erin stepped between us. She was just leaving. I nodded. Yes, I was. As I walked back to my car, I felt it. Not sadness, not betrayal, resignation. The part of me that still hoped he'd stand up for me finally died. They weren't going to stop erasing me, so I'd erase their control instead. October 3rd, 7:42 a.m. I brewed my coffee, sat at my breakfast nook in the pale morning light, and dialed Joel Rice. No more waiting. No more nudges or polite reminders. I didn't need their apology. I needed legal firepower. Let's do it, I said. Joel didn't ask what I meant. He just replied, I'll file the paperwork today. Retainer confirmation hit my inbox 10 minutes later. $4, $500 paid. Engagement confirmed. The subject line was cold, professional, and the most comforting thing I'd read in months. Danielle must have sensed it somehow. The shift in air, the cooling of my tone, the long pause before I replied to her passive-aggressive group texts. She texted Erin at 9:13 a.m. She's bluffing. Of course she thought that. Women like Danielle always believe their victims will stay small, quiet, pliable, too old or too tired to fight back. I used to be. But grief curdles into something else when it's ignored long enough. I was no longer sad. I was surgical. I sat with my coffee, staring at the inbox. Trust documents. LLC amendments. Property titles. A spreadsheet Glenna had sent with every penny I'd ever contributed. Sorted, categorized, totaled. The receipts were airtight. The legal ground was real. And they? They'd built their little empire on top of me like I was a buried utility line. Useful. Invisible. Forgotten. But I still had power. I never revoked my voting rights in Erin's trust. I still held 51% of the condo. I had documentation proving fraud, suppression, misrepresentation, and now motive. Danielle might have built a pretty little narrative, but the law didn't run on curated Instagram posts. It ran on paper, on ink, on proof. I printed the retainer confirmation and slipped it into a binder, alongside the trust draft they never signed, and the HOA access list Ralph had handed me. Page 1 of many. At 10:15, I walked into FedEx and bought a fireproof document bag. At 10:32, I emailed Pastor Ray. Do you have time for a confidential meeting this week? It's about the Reynolds situation. At 10:49, I opened the folder labeled Family Trust, Clauses for Breach of Conduct, because Danielle had mocked the help, and I was about to show her exactly who held the damn deed. October 4th, I walked into the Bank of Georgia, East Bay branch, at exactly 9:01 a.m., the moment the doors opened. Leah Brown, branch manager, recognized me right away. She stood up from her desk like she'd been waiting for me all morning. Ms. Reynolds, she said, conference room 2 is ready. She didn't smile. She knew what this was. We sat across from each other beneath fluorescent lights and a mounted photograph of Savannah's riverfront. I opened my binder. She opened her terminal. Account ending in 4,527, I said. Family investment account. I'd like to freeze it. Her eyebrows lifted. On what grounds? Imminent risk of unauthorized disbursement, I said calmly. I believe $80,000 was about to be moved without my knowledge. Leah nodded slowly. You're still primary on the account? Co-primary, I corrected. But the movement violates the agreement terms. I'm also alleging financial misrepresentation tied to trust fraud. Paperwork's here. I slid the binder across the table. She reviewed the trust clause, the signed deposit slips, Danielle's attempted transfers, flagged, pending, not yet cleared. Then, she did something I didn't expect. She leaned back in her chair. Her voice softened. They tried to move it late last night. I didn't flinch. They were hoping to get ahead of you, she added. But you beat them to it. You froze it before it cleared. Good. Let them feel that flicker of panic. Let Danielle realize that while she was busy posing for board dinners and rewriting family history, I was building a fortress beneath her feet. The $2.5 million family investment account was no longer fluid. It was ice. I signed the freeze order. Leah stamped it. Time, 9:43 a.m. That same hour, Danielle likely logged into her banking app and got a nice red notification. Transfer denied. Access restricted. Please contact branch. Let her call. Let her scream. Let her threaten and stomp in her white power suit. Because the money had stopped moving, and now so had her control. On my way out, Leah touched my arm. For what it's worth, she said, you're not the first matriarch I've seen pushed aside. But you're the first one who came in before it was too late. I nodded. It's not too late. Not yet. That afternoon, Joel filed the motion to audit Danielle's financial behavior tied to the trust. We attached screenshots, flagged transfers, and 3 notarized letters confirming my original contributions. The war had moved into their favorite battleground, money, and I had just flipped the board. October 5th, I wheeled a suitcase into the FedEx print and scan center on Abercorn Street. The same Samsonite I used for weekend trips now held something heavier than clothes. It held receipts, deeds, canceled checks, annotated contracts, screenshots of Danielle's messages, and a copy of every document they never thought I'd keep. Terrence, the clerk with the quiet voice and the patience of a monk, helped me load the files onto their scanner. Organizing a case? He asked, not prying, just curious. Organizing a memory, I replied. Truth was, I wasn't just building a legal argument. I was building the truth, line by line, paper by paper. Something permanent they couldn't laugh away or gaslight out of existence. While the scanner hummed, I labeled each section. Tab A, condo deed, 51% ownership. Tab B, trust draft, unsigned. Tab C, HOA access list, post removal. Tab D, business articles, pre and post erasure. Tab E, fraud attempt, bank transfer logs. Tab F, communications, texts, emails, group chat screenshots. Tab G, receipts minus $134. 5. When the last page scanned, Terrence handed me the print stack. You want these stamped, verified? Yes, I said. Stamp all of them. He ran each sheet through the stamp press like he was branding truth back into paper. Verified, verified, verified. At the bottom of my binder, I added one last document, something personal. A photo of me and Aaron from 1993. Him in his little Easter suit, me in a Goodwill blouse, both of us covered in powdered sugar from funnel cake. I wrote in the margin, I built him from scratch. Danielle had spent the last 2 years trying to erase me, but she'd forgotten something vital. The woman she thought was soft. She was once a single mother who raised a son while juggling 2 jobs and navigating Savannah's good old boy bureaucracy. The woman she thought was just a source of money? She'd kept records. She had backup. She had evidence. At 3:12 p.m., I uploaded everything into a secure, encrypted drive. Joel received the link. Glenna received a copy. Pastor Ray would hold the hard copy in the church, safe by morning. And me? I carried the binder home in the Samsonite, wheeled it through the front door like a trophy. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I set it gently on the kitchen table. Then I poured myself a glass of sweet tea, looked out at the roses, and said out loud, they're not ready. But I was. I didn't call it a meeting. I called it coffee. But at 6 p.m. sharp, inside the church office behind St. Luke's, 4 chairs were filled by the only people I trusted with what came next. Joel Rice, Glenna Marsh, Pastor Ray, and Leah Brown from the bank, who'd come straight from work in her navy suit and low heels, holding a legal pad like she was walking into a deposition. We sat beneath a framed verse on the wall. For everything there is a season. I read it twice, let it settle. Then I opened the binder and passed out the copies. This, I said, is everything they never thought I'd put together. Joel nodded. It's enough. He didn't say to win, or to sue, or to threaten. Just enough. And that's all I needed. Glenna had brought her laptop and connected to the projector. On the wall, the spreadsheet lit up. 5 years of financial support from me to Danielle and Aaron. Categorized, labeled, cross-referenced, groceries, mortgage supplements, SUV payoff, daycare tuition, birthday parties, Danielle's cosmetic dental work, $7, $800, listed under non-essential, but paid in full. Pastor Ray let out a low whistle. And they thought this was invisible? They counted on it being invisible, I said. They counted on my silence. Leah leaned forward, flipping through the pages. You've already won the first round. The freeze worked. And I've flagged 4 more suspicious withdrawals Danielle attempted this morning. She's panicking, Joel said. Let her, I replied. I haven't even made my real move yet. Pastor Ray reached into his folder and pulled out something I hadn't asked for, a statement. He placed it on the table. A character affidavit. I'll sign it. You've served in every ministry we've had. Soup kitchen, grief counseling, kids, literacy. Anyone tries to paint you as vengeful or unstable, they'll have to go through me. I felt something hot rise behind my eyes. Not tears, not yet. Just heat. They saw me. All of them. Not as the help, not as someone to smile at and exclude, but as a woman who had taken care of everyone around her. Until now. Now I was taking care of myself. By 7:10 p.m., every copy of the binder had been digitally encrypted and uploaded to a cloud drive. 2 access codes were distributed. One to Joel, one to Glenna. Danielle couldn't spin this. Aaron couldn't plead ignorance. My allies were in place. My documents were bulletproof, and the war had moved from silent suffering to formal strategy. October 6th, I sat in my garden beneath the crepe myrtle Aaron planted as a teenager. Its branches were thin now, not what they used to be. Like him. The sun was soft, but my tone wasn't. I signed the letter. It was notarized by 10:04 a.m., sealed in an envelope, and sent certified mail to Aaron's home with 2 lines under the recipient. Aaron Thomas Reynolds and Danielle Grace Reynolds, private and legal notice, do not discard. Inside was a single, clear page. Effective immediately. If Danielle Reynolds continues to interfere with or slander my legal position within the family trust, condo property, or investment fund, their eligibility for any remaining distributions from my estate will be revoked. The trust clause was cited in bold. The paragraph below listed my current counsel, the active clauses protecting donor rights, and the bad faith interference trigger Danielle must have forgotten about when she smirked through dinner last week. It wasn't a threat. It was a condition. Signed, Margot Evelyn Reynolds, primary grantor/truster, Reynolds Family Trust, dated October 6, 2025. The receipt came back signed by Aaron at 2:41 p.m. Good. He was still reading my name, still holding my words in his hands. Danielle, I imagine, laughed when he showed her. She's bluffing. That was always her first move. Dismissal, followed by minimization. Then, when that failed, charm. If all else failed, she'd cry. But I wasn't in the room this time. There was no one to manipulate. Just legal language. Signed. Delivered. Enforceable. Joel confirmed. The clause is solid. She crosses the line again, we can initiate removal. Meanwhile, I baked lemon bars, not because I was celebrating, but because I knew what was coming. When a woman like Danielle gets cornered, she doesn't retreat. She rebrands. She throws a dinner. She dresses the wound in white and pearls and invites the world to see how gracious she is while she sharpens the knife behind her back. So I waited, in my garden, surrounded by evidence, allies, and the unshakable fact that for the first time in years, I was playing offense. Let her host whatever distraction she had planned. Let her posture, smile, and sip her champagne. Because now, every word out of her mouth came with a cost, and I had the legal receipt ready to collect. October 7th, 9:03 a.m. Danielle called a board meeting. She titled it Family Futures Strategic Alignment Session. That's how she cloaks warfare. In business, casual buzzwords. I wasn't invited. Of course not. The meeting was held in the Reynolds Company boardroom, the same one I used to clean on Sundays when they couldn't afford janitorial staff. Danielle wore a white power suit and pearl studs, her favorite uniform when she's pretending to be benevolent. I know her moves by heart. She opened the meeting by wringing her hands and saying, "This has been such a hard year for Margot." She called me Margot. Not Mom. Not even Mrs. Reynolds. Just Margot. A name spoken like it belonged to someone distant, troubled, unstable. She told the board I'd been struggling with boundaries, and that perhaps it was time for a generational shift in control. I was told all this by Glenna, who'd been dialed in as a silent attendee. She's still on the board's financial advisory subcommittee. Danielle didn't know that. "She's just tired," Danielle cooed. "She deserves to rest, don't you think?" That's how she said it. As if she were offering me a gift. As if she weren't pushing me out of the very empire she built on my back. But she made one mistake. The board bylaws require unanimous consent for any change to controlling members. And she didn't have it. Because at 9:37 a.m. mid-presentation, Glenna sent me the Zoom link. At 9:40 a.m. I joined the meeting. My camera on. My name displayed, Margot E. Reynolds. Founding stakeholder Danielle froze mid-sentence. Aaron paled. I said nothing for a full 15 seconds. Let them sweat. Then I asked, calmly, "Has there been a motion raised for removal of stakeholder control?" The room went dead silent. Danielle smiled. Too wide. "Margot, we didn't want to bother you. This was just a light discussion." I leaned in toward my webcam. "The trust received no notice of this meeting. That violates the stakeholder protocol outlined in Article 3, Section 5. Joel had taught me the exact wording. Danielle's lip twitched. I continued. "Any attempt to remove me without consent will trigger a full audit. I trust everyone here is comfortable with their past signatures." Then I clicked, "Leave meeting." Simple, quiet, devastating. I turned off the laptop and walked outside. The air was thick with late summer heat, and my roses had begun to bloom again. The board now knew two things. I still had my vote, and I wasn't dead yet. October 10th, 10 a.m. sharp. Bank of Georgia, 10th floor executive conference room. I walked in wearing navy. No pearls, no fanfare. Just a silk scarf Frank once gave me on our 17th anniversary and a binder under my arm. The same one Danielle tried to erase. Waiting for me were 10 people. Legal counsel, the bank's VP, 2 Reynolds board members, and Glenna, already seated, already connected to the projector. Julia Nance, bank VP, sharp as a scalpel, stood and extended her hand. "Mrs. Reynolds, we're ready when you are." "Thank you," I said, placing the binder at the head of the table. This wasn't just a business meeting. This was my courtroom. At 10:03 a.m., Danielle entered. White suit. Gold buttons. Fresh blowout. Like she was headed to a political fundraiser. She smiled too wide when she saw the full table. Then her eyes landed on me. She faltered. Only slightly, but enough to tell me she hadn't expected this. I stood. "Thank you all for coming. Before we proceed, I'd like to distribute copies of the contract amendment regarding the Reynolds-Merrick expansion project, the one scheduled for Q1. I handed out fresh copies. Except this time, the final page had a red stamp across the bottom. Contract canceled, October 2nd, 2025. Danielle blinked hard. "Excuse me?" Julia spoke then. Mrs. Reynolds held the swing vote in the trust. The cancellation clause allowed for withdrawal based on misconduct. Danielle's gaze flicked to Aaron, who looked pale, unsure, smaller than I'd seen him in years. "But we had verbal agreements," she started. I cut in. "Calm. cold. Verbal doesn't hold weight when the documents say otherwise. And as of today, the Reynolds Trust is withholding all partnership funds from future projects until a full audit is complete. Silence. Then Glenna tapped her laptop, and the projector lit up with Danielle's social media post, the one from the dinner, the picture of the table. Her caption, "The help eats in the kitchen." Next slide, the video. 16 seconds of her sneering at me as I served shrimp cocktail. Phones were out. People were murmuring. One of the board members shifted in his seat. Danielle's voice, crystal clear on the recording. "Oh, please, she likes being useful. The help always does." I pressed pause. Then I looked around the room and said the words I'd been waiting months to say. "Does this look like someone who deserves controlling interest in anything?" Danielle opened her mouth, but no sound came out. 10:47 a.m. Same room, same silence, only now it was heavy. Danielle sat motionless in her chair, eyes fixed on the paused video. Her own face frozen mid-sneer, like a portrait of arrogance caught red-handed. The room had shifted. That sparkle in her voice, that curated charm, gone. And Aaron? He looked like a boy again, slumped, ashamed, like the weight of what he'd allowed was finally landing. I didn't feel sorry for him. I'd done that already. Cried those tears, buried that hope. This was something colder. Justice. I opened the binder one last time and slid the final page across the table. Joel, seated beside me, stood and spoke. "This is the notarized revocation form. As of October 2nd, Mrs. Reynolds lawfully withdrew her financial support and rights to fund participation for the Reynolds Merrick project. That includes Danielle Reynolds' executive travel account, vehicle lease, and discretionary budget line." Julia confirmed. "The $30 million investment is formally canceled. Accounts frozen. Property disbursements on hold pending audit." Danielle reached for the paper, fingers trembling. I let her touch it. I wanted her to feel what it meant to lose something she thought she'd already stolen. "I built this company," she snapped. "You're tearing it apart over a dinner party?" I leaned forward, voice low and even. "No, I'm tearing it back down to the truth. That's what you never understood, Danielle. This isn't revenge. This is reversal." Her jaw tightened. "You're bluffing. The board will never back you." Glenna cleared her throat. "They already have." She clicked to the next slide. The voting record. The board had reviewed the footage. They'd read my legal letter. And every single one, except Aaron, had already signed to uphold the cancellation. Even the ones who'd smiled at Danielle's jokes. Even the ones who'd once doubted me. It wasn't personal anymore. It was liability. Danielle went quiet. Joel spoke again, final and crisp. "We'll be filing for full separation of financial interests by end of day. All documents will be made available for public record." Then I stood. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to cry. I just said, "I won't be your help, Danielle. I'm not your story to erase." And I walked out. In the elevator, I exhaled for the first time in hours. My heart was steady, my hands calm. Outside, golden light spilled across the marble steps, and there, waiting with a soft smile, was Leah from the bank. She handed me a velvet pouch. Inside, new condo keys. My name engraved on the tag. 11:02 a.m. I stepped out of the Bank of Georgia building and into sunlight so bright it made the marble steps glow. And standing at the bottom, like fate had marked her place, was Danielle. White suit, no pearls, just fury on her face, cracked wide open now that no boardroom shielded her. She stormed forward. "You think this is over?" I looked her dead in the eye. "No, I think you're over." Behind her, the first reporter raised a mic, then another, and another. Apparently, one of the junior board members had leaked the video, the 16 seconds of her sneering at me as I served food I'd paid for, as she called me the help. As Aaron laughed like it was funny. The clip hit 40,000 views by lunch. By evening, it was on 2 Savannah news sites under the headline, "Matriarch Erased, then Reinstated. Family power struggle unfolds after dinner party insult. I didn't say a word to the press, didn't need to. The footage said everything. Let Danielle try to PR her way out of that. Let her post grainy apology reels about context and miscommunication, because the internet doesn't forget, and neither do I. Leah handed me the velvet pouch with the new condo keys. Deeds updated, she said softly. It's yours, clean title, no co-owners. I nodded, my throat tight with something too deep for tears. Thank you, she smiled. You earned it. Aaron didn't come outside. I imagine he was still upstairs, still slumped in that conference chair, wondering how he'd lost the woman who built his childhood and saved his adulthood, wondering how silence turned into betrayal. Let him wonder. 3 hours later, Glenna sent confirmation that the trust had been updated. Danielle and Aaron's distribution eligibility now sat under a formal review. No access, no discretionary payments, no blind withdrawals. The beach condo access list? Ralph reinstated me, sent a little message with it. Miss Margot, gates always open now. Back home, I poured sweet tea and sat on my back porch with the crepe myrtle overhead. My phone buzzed once. Aaron. I let it ring. He made his choice. And so did I. This wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. About reclaiming my name, my role, my dignity. The ones they tried to discard like used linens after a party. But I'm not linen. I'm legacy. Let them rebuild without me. Let the world see what happens when a woman stands up. Not with shouting, not with fists, but with proof, peace, and power. And let Danielle remember, the help doesn't eat in the kitchen anymore. She owns the house.